Coming in hot, 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 Lisa shares her financial tips and strategies to build wealth, have fun with finances, and be debt-free without having a restrictive budget. From bankrupt to millionaire, Lisa knows what it's like to feel as if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Her unconventional money multiplier system is the very wealth protocol that enabled her to retire 2.5 years early, pay down $100,000 of debt in 6 months, and move to her dream home at the beach. Hey, 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 welcome to this episode of I Date Money and Money Talks. I'm your host, Lisa Drennon, and today we have a really awesome guest. Laura Ora is an alignment coach for female entrepreneurs, guiding them to learn how to honor their energy and truly listen to what they want instead of what they've been taught that they should. Should have, could have, would have, right? Get those out there. Ditch them right out the door. Laura is the CEO of Works and Company, an urban branding studio, the host of a top 100 podcast, the Gutsy Podcast, speaker, author, and all-around visionary. Love it. She'll be the first person to push you out of your comfort zone and the last to hug you as you head to the next level of your life. Let's rip off the Band-Aid and welcome Laura. Thank you so much for being in this space and sharing your time and energy with us. Love this. I love the Laura Ora. We talked about it pre-show, but I think it's really cool just to share that with the audience. So tell us about this Laura Ora.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's always a great opportunity to share the space with another female entrepreneur to talk about money, right? This thing that we've been taught all kinds of things about, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I appreciate the space to have this conversation. So Laura Ora is the embodiment of all aspects of me. And what I mean by that is it is reinviting my inner child to come out and play. It's allowing my higher self to guide me, and then my present day self to embody all of that together to be my most fullest aligned self here on this planet. And so, I just think that it's a beautiful mix. We grow up very quickly and we stop playing, and then we also stop listening and we stop connecting. And so we unintentionally cut off these very big parts of who we are. But if we allow them to be a part of our present day self, then I truly believe that that's where some magic can happen. So that is what Laura Ora is.
Oh, I love that. And it's so important when we're working in the three realms, wealth, health, and relationships. And when it comes to wealth, I always like to say, if you work on the wealth, everything else falls into place. So I love how you talk about the past, present, and future self. I do with my clients, I introduce aromatherapy to connect with those, because so many of us want to live in the past and we get tripped up of, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve to have money. I want to make millions, but then we don't take the action. We don't do it. And I like how on the application for the show, I asked you, imagine money as a person. What's the one word that describes the relationship? And you said building. That's a very interesting word. Tell me why you chose building.
Building. Repeat the question to me again. Help me relive that moment.
So on the application, I asked you to imagine money was a person, and how would you describe your relationship in one word?
My relationship. Got it. Building. Because I'm consistently rebuilding, maybe would even be a more clear word, rebuilding my relationship with money. I've had a very complicated relationship with money in the past. And so building that relationship, we're strengthening, we're repairing some old. We are co-creating together. We are learning how to communicate together. It's like a relationship, right? Like we are building the foundations for this next chapter of our life together. And so that's why I chose that word.
Oh, I love that. And it is. It's so many think, oh, I'll just do this one thing and then everything will be fine. As soon as I get this, as soon as I land this client, I'll pay off this debt and then we'll be fine. And, it's almost like this love-hate relationship. So when we can realize it and see it from a point of view, like, yes, we're building a relationship. And if you think about your relationship with a partner or, a parent or a sibling or a best friend, that takes work. It's just not, if you ignore the person and, don't return the phone calls, you might get feelings about things. They might say something to you. And next thing you know, you're in a huge argument. Same thing with money. You might get mad that you have this unexpected bill, or, you didn't close the month of, June or July or whatever with the numbers that you expected. So, as an entrepreneur, as an alignment coach, how do you, or I shouldn't say how, but what do you find to be really easy for you to align with when it comes to your money working in the field that you do with your clients?
So, I think it's important to maybe, if I may, look in the past just to honor it for a second, because my money story has been complicated
Mm,
as
I
I
like-
grew up in a household where money was the root of all evil. Money made you a jerk. Money came in and left just as fast. Scarcity, any conversations around money were heated or emotional, or I grew up believing that money sucked.
Mm,
And I wholeheartedly embodied that growing up. And I wholeheartedly carried that into my business. So I've been in business for 16 years now. And so I've learned a lot of things. And
mhm,
one thing I can tell you that as a business owner, your human side doesn't go away. In fact, it gets amplified. If there are things that need to be focused on, shifted, recognized, healed, it's like if you're starting a business, just know that healing those parts of you is essential. It does
mhm,
not go away. And so working through my money story and, living out some of the childhood experiences that I had then as an adult, it was easy to put shame on myself and see, here it is. And, all this like social proof why, yeah, money does suck and money is hard to make. And to have it, you have to work really hard. Or one of my personal favorites, money makes you think that you're better than everybody else.
mm,
So what did I do? I'm like, well, I don't want people to think that of me. So let me just literally rebound it. Like,
mhm,
oh, it's trying to come in. Nope. I don't want to be a jerk to everybody. And so, I take us on this little bit of a journey just to set the foundation that it's not always easy,
mhm,
but it is shiftable. And
mhm,
that's where it comes into the present day moment. And especially with the work that I get to do with my clients is reframing what money means to you, what that story has been playing on repeat in our minds, and then also in our bodies, because our
mhm,
bodies feel what our minds think. And so when we can really like get vulnerable, be very honest with ourselves first and foremost, and then start to really listen to like, what do I actually want? Who am I truly? It's okay to want money. Money
mhm,
doesn't make me anything than other than who I am. It's an amplifier, right? So it amplifies who I already am as a human. And while I may not be perfect, and I certainly have made my fair share of mistakes, I can go to bed at night knowing that I'm a pretty decent human. And
mhm,
so money is only going to amplify that. So women, particularly in business, there's a lot of worthiness,
mhm,
right? And these stories that we've been taught about what money's going to make us, and how many times have you been sitting around in a conversation and somebody starts talking about like, oh, did you see the new car that they got? Oh, look at that bag she has. Oh, who does she think she is? And it's very, very easy to absorb that information as your truth, to
mhm,
start forming beliefs like, oh, if I get ahead, or if I pay off something, or if, oh, I go on a vacation, or, oh, I do want to buy a car, that people are going to say things about me.
mhm,
Then so we unintentionally start pushing it away. And so it's not a straight line by any means. In fact, it's quite the roller coaster, but uh, you know, here on the other side of this, always still in the journey, but on the other side of it, it's like at the end of the day, you have to learn to listen to yourself and trust yourself.
mhm,
People are going to say it no matter what you do,
mhm.
so you might as well do the things that make you happy.
Yes, so true. And it's funny because so many of us look for that external validation and then we're concerned, like it matters. What difference does it make if someone says, "Oh, well, like you have all the money." I actually have a friend that we've known for several years who always says, "Well, if I had my husband's name is Kip. If I have Kip and Lisa's money, I could burn mine." I go, "Well, that would just be dumb. Why would you burn yours when you add mine to yours so you'd have more? Like, let's think about this."
Right.
And then he'd like look at me like, you know, didn't know what to say. And I think about some of the idioms that we grew up with and some of the comments that people make. And one of the big ones that comes to mind is, oh, you can't keep up with the Joneses. It's like,
Yeah.
well, why not? And who are the Joneses and what do I need to keep up with them for? And it wasn't, or, the grass is greener, and you would see like, it's when I grew up, I grew up in a rich family. Both my parents were entrepreneurials and they had multiple income streams coming in, but then they got divorced. And when they got divorced, my mom was single with 4 kids and had to start all over again. And we, were poor and she had to work her way back up. And it was this roller coaster ride, like you had mentioned, of this feast or famine. And, that was something else, another idiom we grew up. It's either feast or famine. And,
Yep.
because she's a cosmetologist and, during prom and wedding season, it was feast. And then, the summer months was famine. And then we'd go back into the holiday time. So, her income streams depended on the seasons. And I always just remembered, and it's like, and money goes where money is. Well, I want money to come where I am. Like, well, how do we change this? But realizing that a lot of the things that we grew up set the tone. You had said that you had grew up with this anger towards money. And just I could just feel the frustration come through your body as you were in your facial expressions. When you watch this on YouTube, you can you got angry when you were saying this. So
Well, like I said, your body holds that. It
yeah,
remembers, right?
yeah,
Muscle memory is a real thing. So,
it is absolutely. So what's your earliest childhood memory around money? When was the very first time you were introduced to money?
oh, that's a great question. I think the very first memory that I have of money, I was probably 5 or 6
Mm-hmm.
ish. And my brother had recently been born. We lived in a townhome, I can recall. And I just remember like this conversation sitting around the table, right? And papers stacked up and like frustrations and yelling and just this kind of like deep sense of worry.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the foundation for almost every conversation about money there on out.
Um,
It's so we don't realize the impact that words and emotions have on children
mm-hmm.
and how our foundational beliefs are formed at a very early age between 0 and 7. That's when we are forming our belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And so paying attention to what you're saying about money around your children. I recently just heard, I don't know if it was an article or a TikTok or something along the lines of how when parents are always saying, no, you can't get that, we can't afford it. No, we can't afford that. No, not today, we can't afford it. And how that becomes their truth
Mm-hmm.
and how that becomes their foundational belief system. And it's like, wow, you just don't put 2 and 2 together. Back in the 80s and even certainly before, it was not to talk about money was absolutely unheard of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was behind closed doors. There was no public information about it. We certainly did not have the access back then. So, I also believe that people only did with what the information that they knew.
Mm-hmm.
But, now we know better, right? And so it's now a lot of our generation that is breaking these generational
Curses. I like to
conversations,
call them curses.
foundations around money. And, that's one thing that I am always, always, always very conscious about
Mm-hmm.
is how I am speaking about money in front of my son,
Mm-hmm.
how I am helping him to learn about money instead of it being this thing to fear.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's breaking that cycle that has gone on for heaven knows how long prior to me, but that stops with me.
Yeah. It's funny because I hear that a lot on the show that, I wasn't taught about finances growing up and it was taboo to talk about money. And, mom would take us shopping and we'd have to come home and hide our purchases from dad. And she'd say, don't tell your father, and it's like she'd wash the clothes and cut the tags off. And, one of the stories on the earlier show was about this. And I thought, interesting, because we just didn't have any money. My mom would be like, nope, can't afford that. So you want it, go get a job. I actually started working when I was 11 years old, babysitting full time. Got my little certification from the American Red Cross. Babysat the neighbor across the street for $1 an hour. And 11 years old, I had to go out and buy my own school clothes. So never really had a lot of school clothes because, money doesn't go that far on $1 an hour.
Not particularly.
No, but my grandmother taught me about money when I was younger, around 7, 8 years old. And she gave me this piggy bank, and it had 3 slots, 10% for savings, 10% for giving, and then 80% for whatever I wanted, I could save for. So all my coins and dollars that I would get, and I was really lucky. I used to find $20 bills all the time when we were walking down to the corner because there was a bar there, like a little strip mall. And yeah, people lose money all the time when they've been drinking. 7, 8-year-old girls like myself got to find it. And it was fun because I would just treat everyone, and I, put in all the money and all that. But when my kids were growing up, I was like, they need to learn about finances. Like, this is what we need to make the world go around. And I remember making little checks for my son, who's now 37, and I would teach him how to write out the check. And he is so good with money, and like, he has his own little accounting system, but he's Maverick the money maker. He just loves to multiply his money, and he's really good about it. And then my other two, I did the same thing, and they're more exposed to the digital world, like, oh, we'll just, use the credit and worry about it later. It's like, now where did that come into play? And I realized a lot of my old habits, my stories came in. It's just like, but that's what they saw when we go to the store. You have a budget of $250 for school clothes, but we're going to swipe this card and then we'll just pay it later. So I can see that disconnect as you were talking. And like, oh, that's a really like, the lessons that we teach our kids that we model is what they're going to pick up the most. And they don't ever see the back end, right? They didn't see me paying the bills because they were usually at school or wherever, right? So I see where that disconnect is now. So thank you for like pointing that out. That's amazing. So anyone listening out there, if you have children, really start demonstrating to them, like have them sit down on your money dates and sit down with them and say, this is what we're doing. And imagine what a different world we'll live in 20 years from now when these kids start going into the workforce and contributing and earning and receiving. And, we're going to pass the what is that called? The baton. We're going to pass
Yes.
it off to our younger generation. Let's prepare them to do this. So I want to go back and touch a little bit about this anger that you had towards money. It lasted, you brought it into adulthood with you. What was the pivoting moment that you were able to reconcile with money and say, you know what, I'm done being angry with you. Let's start building.
Well, I think it's been a series of events, to be honest with you. So, another big milestone that happened in my husband and I's life is we filed bankruptcy. And that happened early adulthood. It was the 2007, 2009 market crash, recession, wonderfulness that that time period was. I had recently quit my job to start my business. I was 6.5 months pregnant with our son, and my husband walked in the door one day, midday, which was very unlikely because he worked an hour and a half away. And I can remember the look on his face, and I knew without him even saying a word. And he's like, I just got laid off. And that he worked in the housing market in 2007. I mean, it was
Um,
it was inevitable, right? So
mhm.
that really started kind of this downward spiral, I think, in our financial journey. We had been doing pretty decent up until that point, but that really started a whole new chapter that I was not awesome, but was necessary, right? Like we go through the things that we need to learn, and that gives us the power to help shape the future, not just for ourselves, but for other people. So, going through that was very challenging. A lot of shame around that, a lot of fear around that. And, like I said, meanwhile, I'm building this business. I've got this brand new little baby boy, and everything is new and everything is uncertain.
Mhm.
And so, we operated for quite a while in that feeling. Things started to grow and started to evolve. And then if we fast forward a pretty decent chunk of time, when 2020 hit, it should hit the fan across the board. It doesn't matter who you were, right? Like it impacted everybody. For us, in the business at that time, these old stories were perpetuating. What I realized is I unintentionally put together people pleasing with my money. And
Mm.
so I want to make sure everyone else is taken care of. I wanted to make sure that everyone else's bills were paid. I wanted to make sure that like people didn't leave. So for me, my path is people pleasing to make sure that people don't abandon me and therefore I don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
So that is like kind of like my subconscious training. And so I hadn't paid myself in like 4 or 5 months,
Ooh.
right? I was making sure that everyone else's paychecks were getting out there, but then we even got to the point where their paychecks were bouncing, right? Like
Mm.
I had overexpended myself emotionally, spiritually, financially, just to make sure that these people wouldn't leave me. And in the moment, I didn't know that's what was going on, right? Like it's not always easy to see that in the moment. Looking back and now going through the healing, I can see that very clearly. But
Mm-hmm.
when 2020 hit, it was like the whole table got wiped clean.
Right.
It was just like all of my back fear, my worry, what if, all the like everything shut up. And I got this very, very loud, instinctive voice that said, "You got to let everybody go today." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like the right. And then I was like, no, like now I'm at the point where like it's survival, right? I either save a portion of the business and to care for myself and my family for the first time, maybe in a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
or I continue to try and fight this battle. And I'm like, I'm not willing to fight this battle anymore. So I had to make the hard but necessary decision to lay off my team. I packed up I went back to my house. I worked in my basement for the next year by myself and I rebuilt everything. But, in that moment when I went home and I'm sitting in the basement and I'm sitting in this crap storm that I had allowed, that's another hard pill to swallow. I had allowed this, right? But I can own that now. And I'm looking at everything and I'm like, how did I get here? Here's the story again. The
Mm-hmm.
story that money is hard, the story that I have to put myself on the back burner to make sure everyone's taken care of, the story that if I don't make sure everyone's happy, then they're going to leave me. I'd just been playing out this story and here it was again, but just in a much bigger sense. And it was kind of in that situation where I was like, we're not doing this anymore. We're not doing this anymore. So I went on this alignment journey to figure out who I was and what do I actually want. I hadn't asked myself that in probably a decade. What does Laura want?
Mm-hmm.
I was too worried about what does everyone else need of me. And I forgot to ask, what does Laura want?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to fold into that and realize that I am not selfish, I am necessary, I am worthy, I have magic to infuse into this world. There's a bigness inside of me that just keeps getting like the lid put on because I keep being like, no, 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 we'll do that later. We have to make sure everyone else is taken care of first. Right. And so I just started to undo. That's where the undoing the shoulds came from. Like, I should do this and I should do that. And I'm like, no, what do I want? What if I start operating from a space of I want instead of I should? What if I
Mm-hmm.
start making decisions from a space of want instead of should? And then I discovered that that's what alignment is. It's
Mm-hmm.
getting to know who you are and then giving yourself permission to make every decision from that space. So again, it's not just been like this, you know, click of the, snap of the fingers type of moment. It's been a long evolution, but
Mm-hmm.
it's what's led me to where I am now.
And it's a beautiful journey. And I thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. These are things that people don't like to talk about, and your willingness to share is really powerful. The the emotional journey with money is so hard. I mean, I can't even imagine. And I know, COVID did impact us all, similarly, but so differently. Our thoughts are the most powerful tool that we have. And the isolation and the sense of our freedom being taken away, like you can't do this. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is ridiculous. And I have a different viewpoint than most people about some of the restrictions that we had. We won't go there today, but I understand like the isolation part and what's going to happen with the economy. Like, what do you mean everything shut down? And so many like jobs were affected by that, where you had to be in person, but yet first responders had to be there. And like, why is it okay for them, not for me? But then when you think about it for the money wise, you know, aid came, right? There was some countries who gave their entrepreneurs 40 grand, and they would be able to rebuild and get through this period. And it was like a loan, like we're like set up this future loan for ourselves, but realizing like, oh, do we really want to borrow from our future self? Like, does our present self have it? But then coming to the realization, like, especially as I'm a people pleaser as well, and coming from that and saying, well, no, I want them to be taken care of, and sacrificing your own sanity, your own security, because being able to have a partnership with money is security. That's our security blanket. And we can do so many good things. I mean, money in the hands of good people does wonderful things. So that loving attitude that you had, like, no, I want to take care of you, but meanwhile you're falling apart, and to come to that realization saying, no, wait, I need to take care of me. What does Laura want? And that is the most important question we, especially as entrepreneurs, can ask ourselves. When I was in my 9 to 5, my youngest was 14, he's 25 now. I was sprung out. I was working full time. I was treasurer for 3 not-for-profits, and I was working a part-time job. I was doing all kinds of stuff, right? And I was just like exhausted, like soulfully exhausted. Like I wanted something. I was trying to fill this void. All this money was coming in, and I felt like I had nothing. And it was just like, what can I do different? And when I remember connecting with a mentor at the time, and he's like, well, what does Lisa want? I'm like, what? No one's ever asked me that question. What do you mean? Who cares what I want? I have to take care of all these other people. Like, this is my job. It's like, no, you need to take care of yourself. And realizing that, and you had said earlier, we feel it in our body. And I have one of my clients, we we were on a call just before this interview, and she was like, I am mentally exhausted. I'm like, go rest. She's, but I have so much to do. I go, you're not going to get anything done. Go rest. Listen to your body. And it's so important to listen to those cues. So when you told your staff, your payroll, sorry, how did you work through that sense of abandonment? What tools did you use?
Well, I think it's one of those things where the thing that I feared the most ended up happening.
Mm.
And I think that it happened because I was ready to heal through it. Because in that moment, like I said, when I was sitting in the basement, I'm literally by myself now. People are gone, and most of those people never came back. It forced me to go through my deep rooted fear that people are going to leave me. And there's a big circle around that and lots of different pieces and aspects to it. But at the end of the day, I was alone. Now I have my husband and my son at home, which is different. I'm very thankful for them. That's not what I'm talking about. But this creation that I had made and the people that I cared very deeply about were now gone. And I'm like, the thing that I was most afraid of is happening. And in the moment, that's terrifying, right? Looking back, I'm actually kind of grateful because it allowed me to see that Laura's okay on her own. That Laura doesn't have to expend herself. Laura doesn't have to go to the end of the earth to make other people happy, to be validated. Laura doesn't have to give away every aspect of her mind, body, soul, and money to keep people. That Laura's okay on her own. And I think that was the lesson that I needed to learn. That was the healing for me, because now my centered self is so much stronger that I know that if I'm alone, I mean, I've been alone for quite some time now, to be honest with you. Like I sit in my building by myself still to this day. I have a team, they're virtual, and we've rebuilt things in different ways, but I had to learn that I'm okay by myself and that people come and go. But as long as I stay rooted in who I am, that's all that matters. So for me, it was a lot of different tools. Huge advocate for taking care of your mental health. So therapy for the win. I will advocate for that all day long. Another taboo topic that I think has finally started to shift into like normal conversation. So lots of therapy, lots of reconnection. Like I was so disconnected. Like I realized I'm like, when is the last time I like enjoyed the moment that I'm in? I was so busy like putting out fires and stuff of the past and worried about the future and like playing this professional game of whack-a-mole that I was like all over the place. So I started learning about my body and my mind and my emotions and learning where my anxiety was coming from. Turns out it was from all of this shit, right? Like there's just so many different pieces. So I look at things very holistically,
Mm-hmm.
getting to know my body and my mind and what do I need, and checking in with myself, grounding and connecting. Spiritual work is a huge part of my life, the therapy aspect. And then really honestly, a lot of practice of making decisions from an aligned space.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big part of it. It's this little turn of the dial with
Mm-hmm.
every decision, with every moment. People think that like there's a quick fix or a hack, or like I can go online and take this 1 30-minute course and my life is going to be fixed. And it's like that might be an important part of the journey, but that's not going to fix the challenge.
Right.
Where we fix things, where we adjust things, where we shift things is in every tiny moment in every decision, and
Mm-hmm.
choosing to go inward, get aligned, and choose from that space.
Yeah, and it's so important to do that with in all aspects in your wealth, health, and relationships. And when we get in alignment with our finances, it makes it so much easier for us to carry that over to the relationships and to the health. Because you get that, you don't have that worry about that money around it. What's your favorite way to manage your money?
I'm a big fan of my Sunday money day.
I like it.
So one of the things that I faced was I always had this like out of sight, out of mind. If I don't look at it, I'll never know how bad it is. I paired that with, well, I'm a creative, so therefore I'm not a numbers person, so I'm just not going to look at it, right? Like, and that concoction is a storm. Okay, if anybody's listening and you resonate with those, start there. Shift the perspective around that, because if you're a creative, you must know your numbers. If you're not a creative, you must know your numbers, right? Like it's that initial like, okay, I'm scared to look at it, but not looking at it doesn't give me any power. In fact,
Right.
it runs the show. So,
Mhm.
A, look at your numbers, but
Mhm.
then also like creating this kind of ritual or experience around how I'm showing up with money. Like, so every Sunday, I do my money stuff, which is paying bills, moving stuff into our high yield savings account. It's shifting things around. It's just, I call it playing with the money. I
Mhm.
like to play with it now, whereas before it was very like, ah. So I started to build this habit of looking at our numbers every Sunday. So it was like temporary discomfort. Okay, now I know. Oh, that's actually not so bad. Oh, I
Mhm.
don't want to look at it. Oh, temporary discomfort. Oh, now I know. Now it's not so bad. And I'm like, hold on a second. Looking at these things actually gives me a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
And with that knowledge, I have a lot more power. I can make decisions. I can shift things around. Okay, I'm starting to see this differently now, right? And so every Sunday is my money day. I like to put on whatever kind of music I'm feeling, right? I usually have a fresh cup of coffee. I've got a space in my home where I do my money stuff. My son knows about it too. So, he's doing his money stuff, on Sundays with us as well now. He reconciles his own accounts. Like he's getting a really good foundation right now.
That's
But
awesome.
it just gives me the opportunity to know. And
Mhm.
if it's not where I want it to be, okay, now I know. Now I can do something differently. Now I
Yeah.
can shift something. Now I can, move something around. Now I can make a different decision. But if you just don't know because you're not looking at it, all of your power is stripped away.
Mhm.
So that's become a fun thing. And now it is so second nature that like I don't even think about it. And I'll also add in here really quickly that if I'm not feeling awesome, I won't force myself to do it,
Mhm.
because I'm very conscious that everything is energy. And then if
Mhm.
I go into my money because I'm frustrated or I'm irritated, or, it's the week before my period and I want to just like burn everything, like I'm just very conscious about how I'm feeling. And
Mhm.
sometimes I give myself the chance, like I'll take a walk or just sit outside or listen to music. And sometimes that energy shifts. And then I'm like, okay, now it's time to do the money. But I'm not going to take that into my money, because money is like a sponge and it
Mhm.
will absorb any type of energy that is around it. So I just want to put that out there, that don't force yourself to do your money day when you're feeling meh. Like get yourself recentered, get back into your body, and then get into it.
Yeah, and it's so important. I love that you date money weekly and having that energy to do it. I know sometimes my money date comes up and I'm like, I'm taking a nap. We'll talk later. Let's reschedule. We'll go for ice cream. But having that energetic, that reciprocal energy of giving and receiving is so important. I love that you have your son sit down with you. That's just so amazing. What's the best way for our audience to connect with you?
Yeah. So lauraora.com is my website. It's LAURAAURA.com. That's the hub for all things me to learn about my coaching programs and classes that I teach. But in the social space, I play the most on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And my handle is at that Laura Ora.
Oh, I love it. And we'll put the links to connect with you in the show notes. What are some words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with the audience?
I just want everyone listening to know that you have so much more power and control with your money than maybe it feels like in this very moment. That knowledge is truly power, and that small shifts add up to big changes. And then if you're willing to continue to show up, you're willing to shift the way that you look and feel about money, and you choose to make decisions from your grounded, centered space instead of what the world tells you that you should, you most absolutely 100% can get everything that you want and then some.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your journey and being so vulnerable with us. And for those of you listening, please check the show notes to connect with Laura Ora, especially if you're needing alignment. I mean, and this is a full alignment, body, mind, spirit. And a lot of the thoughts that we have, they're the most powerful tool. Like I said earlier, thinking about what you're thinking will help you get the results that you want when you identify those feelings that get created, and your body will feel that impact before your even mind catches up. So really thinking about those money stories that you're telling yourself, and what would you rather believe about money? So be sure to give the show some love, give us a 5-star rating, share it with those you know who need to hear this story, connect with Laura Ora, and remember, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with it. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to rate the show, give us some love. We would love your review. And remember, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with it. And some words of advice: pay yourself first. Are you ready to partner with money? Go check out the money dating game at idatemoney.com and choose your partner. We hope you always get the date you want.